The year was 2157, when humanity's greatest fleet disappeared without a trace. Captain James stood on the bridge of the U.E.'s Titan, one of 50 warships that made up Earth's deep space exploration fleet. These weren't ordinary ships, each one. Stretched nearly 1,000 kilometers long, built with humanity's most advanced technology. Their mission was simple: explore the outer reaches of the galaxy and establish humanity's presence among the stars. Captain, we're approaching the anomaly. Lieutenant Tom reported from his station. The massive energy reading had appeared on their sensors 3 days ago, pulsing with a strange rhythm that seemed almost alive. James studied the swirling vortex of light on the main screen. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Colors that shouldn't exist danced across its surface, pulling at space itself like a cosmic whirlpool. All ships maintain formation, he commanded through the fleet-wide channel. We're going in for a closer look. Admiral Roberts, commanding from the flagship U.S. Colossus, gave the final order. This could be the discovery of the century. All crews prepare for scanning procedures. But as the fleet moved closer, something went wrong. The anomaly suddenly expanded, growing from the size of a moon to larger than Jupiter in seconds. Energy. Tendrils shot out like massive tentacles, wrapping around each ship. Tom's hands flew across his console. Captain, we're being pulled in. Engines are at maximum, but we can't break free. All ships, emergency retreat. Robert's voice crackled through the chaos, but it was too late. The anomaly had them. James watched in horror as the U.S. Thunder, their sister ship, stretched like rubber as it was pulled toward the center. Time itself seemed to bend. On the bridge, some crew members moved in slow motion, while others blurred with speed. What's happening to us? Someone screamed. The scientist, Dr. Smith, stumbled to the captain's chair. It's a temporal rift, a hole in space-time itself. We're being pulled into... His words cut off as a blinding flash filled every screen, every window, every corner of the ship. Back on Earth, the Deep Space Monitoring Station watched their screens. In disbelief, Director Wilson stood frozen as 50 dots representing humanity's most powerful warships simply vanished from existence. One moment they were there, the next nothing. No debris, no signals, no trace. Sir, we've lost all contact with the fleet, the operator said, his voice barely a whisper. Send everything we have to those coordinates. Every probe, every scanner. Wilson ordered, though he knew it was futile. The anomaly had vanished, along with the ship's days turned to weeks. Weeks to months. Earth's government declared the fleet lost, with all hands. Over 1 million of humanity's best and brightest gone in an instant. Memorials were built. Families mourned. The space program nearly shut down entirely, traumatized by the loss. But Earth didn't give up. Humanity never did. They built new ships, smaller and more careful. They expanded slowly, meeting other species, joining the Galactic Council, learning they weren't alone in the universe. The story of the lost fleet became legend, a cautionary tale about the dangers of deep space. The alien races they met spoke of ancient warnings about that region of space. The Vians called it the Eater of Time. The Kreks named it the Void of No Return. Even the ancient elders, who had traveled the stars for millions of years, avoided that sector entirely. 30 years passed. Humanity had grown, learned, adapted. They had allies now, enemies too. The galaxy was a complex web of politics and power. But no one, human or alien, ever expected what would happen next. Because deep in that temporal rift, in a place where time moved differently, where decades passed like days and days like centuries, the lost fleet wasn't destroyed. They were changing, growing, evolving in ways that defied understanding. The anomaly wasn't a destroyer. It was a chrysalis, and after 30 years of Earth time, the chrysalis was ready to open. Asterisk Commander Lisa sat at her desk in the new Earth Defense Station, reviewing routine reports from the outer colonies. It had been another quiet day in what had become a relatively peaceful sector of human space. The galaxy had changed much in the 30 years since the Lost Fleet vanished. Humanity now controlled 12 star systems and maintained peaceful relations with most alien civilizations. "Commander, we're picking up something strange," Sergeant Mike called out from the sensor station. His voice carried an edge of confusion that made Lisa look up from her reports. "Define strange, Sergeant," Lisa said, walking over to his station. Mike frowned at his screens. "It's a signal, but unlike anything in our databases. The computer can't identify the frequency pattern. It's coming from—" "That can't be right. From where?" Lisa leaned over to look at the display. "From the dead zone, ma'am. The exact coordinates where the Lost Fleet disappeared 30 years ago." Lisa's blood ran cold. The dead zone had been quarantined for 3 decades. No ship, human or alien, dared approach it. Boost the signal. Put it on the main screen. The bridge fell silent as the signal appeared on the display, a complex pattern of waves that seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. Then, buried within the static, they heard it. A voice, distorted but unmistakably human. "This is U.E.S. Titan ... requesting. Approach vector ... Earth command. Respond?" "That's impossible," Mike whispered. The Titan was lost with all hands. Lisa's training kicked in. "Send an emergency message to Earth Command. Priority 1. And get me Ambassador Ray from the Galactic Council. They need to know about this immediately. Within hours, every major power in the galaxy knew something was happening in the dead zone. Ships from dozens of species gathered at a safe distance, their sensors trained on the anomaly's last known position. The Vians sent their entire Third Fleet. The Krex dispatched their finest science vessels. Even the mysterious elders emerged from their isolation to observe. On the bridge of Earth's newest flagship, the U's Victory, Admiral Johnson stood ready. He had been a young officer when the Lost Fleet vanished. Now, with gray hair and years of experience, he commanded humanity's response to this impossible situation. "Sir, the signal is getting stronger," his communications officer reported. "We're receiving more messages. They're asking for confirmation codes from 30 years ago." "Send them," Johnson ordered. "If this is really our people, they'll need to know we're here." The response came immediately. "Earth Command, this is Admiral Roberts aboard the U.E.S. Colossus. Prepare for our emergence. And Admiral, you might want to clear some space. We've grown a bit." Before Johnson could ask what that meant, space itself began to tear. A rift opened where the anomaly had been, starting small but growing rapidly. Light poured out, not harsh but somehow alive, pulsing with energy that made every sensor scream. Warnings. Then they emerged. The first ship to exit the rift was the U.E.S. Titan, but it was no longer the ship that had left Earth 30 years ago. Where once it had been 1,000 kilometers long, and now stretched for tens of thousands. Its hull gleamed with an organic metal that seemed to shift and flow like liquid while maintaining solid form. Weapon systems that defied understanding lined its surface, not built but grown, integrated perfectly into the ship's structure. "By the stars," the Vion commander transmitted to his fleet, "it's the size of a small moon." But the Titan was just the beginning. Ship after ship emerged from the rift, each one transformed beyond recognition. The U's thunder rolled out like a metallic planet, its surface covered in cities of light. The U.E.S. Warrior emerged with tendrils of energy extending from its hull, like the arms of a cosmic octopus, each one capable of grasping objects the size of asteroids. Admiral Johnson watched his displays in shock. How is this possible? Those ships are bigger than some planets. Finally, the UES Colossus emerged. If the other ships were moons, the Colossus was a giant. It dwarfed everything around it, an artificial world of metal and energy that radiated power. Entire ecosystems seemed to exist on its surface, visible even from this distance. Earth Command, this is Admiral Roberts. The message came through, clear now and strong. The lost fleet has returned. We have much to discuss. The anomaly wasn't a disaster, it was a gift. We've spent 30 years in a place where the laws of physics are more like suggestions. We've learned things, seen things, become things that will change everything. The gathered alien fleets began backing away, their commanders frantically reporting to their governments. Humanity's lost fleet hadn't just returned. They had returned to something beyond anyone's imagination. Asterisk. Admiral Roberts stood in what had once been the conference room of the UES Colossus. Now, it was something more, a vast chamber that seemed to extend beyond physical dimensions, where reality bent to accommodate thoughts and ideas. Across from him sat Admiral Johnson, who had shuttled over with a small diplomatic team, their faces mixing awe and fear. "I know this is hard to understand," Roberts began, his voice carrying a strange resonance that seemed to echo from the walls themselves. "We barely understand it ourselves, and we lived through it." Johnson looked around the room, noting how the walls seemed alive, pulsing with a faint rhythm that matched his heartbeat. "Admiral, with all due respect, your ships are the size of celestial bodies. Your crew, are they even human anymore?" Roberts smiled, a gesture that was both familiar and alien. "We're human, Johnson. Perhaps more human than we've ever been. Let me explain what happened to us in that anomaly." He waved his hand, and the room transformed. They were suddenly standing in space, watching the lost fleet's entry into the anomaly 30 years ago. It was a perfect recreation, down to the smallest detail. The rift didn't destroy us. It took us to a place between dimensions, a realm where thought and matter are one and the same. The scene shifted, showing the fleet floating in an impossible space filled with colors that had no names. Time moved differently there. What was 30 years for you was thousands for us. But we weren't just sitting idle. The place was alive, Johnson. It tested us, taught us, changed us. Johnson watched as the recreation showed crew members learning to manipulate matter with their minds, ships growing and evolving like living organisms. "The first year was chaos," Roberts continued. "People were terrified. Some went mad. But then we realized the truth. The anomaly was a test, created by a civilization so ancient that even the elders are children compared to them. A test for what?" Johnson asked. "To see if a species was ready for the next step in evolution. Not biological evolution, but something greater. The merger of consciousness and technology, of thought and reality." Roberts showed them images of crew members learning to communicate without words, of engineers redesigning ships by thinking them into new shapes, of scientists discovering laws of physics that Earth's greatest minds couldn't even imagine. Dr. Smith, who had aged only slightly despite the time that had passed, stepped forward. "The ships grew because we grew. They're not just vessels anymore. They're extensions of our collective consciousness. Every crew member is connected to their ship, and the ships are connected to each other. We're still individuals, but we're also something more." "How many survived?" Johnson asked quietly. "All of them," Roberts replied, and Johnson's eyes widened in disbelief. "Every single person who entered that anomaly is still alive. Death works differently when you exist partially outside normal space-time. We can show you." The room shifted again, and suddenly it was filled with people, crew members from the lost fleet, looking exactly as they had 30 years ago, yet somehow more. Their eyes held depths of knowledge that seemed infinite. They nodded at Johnson and his team, smiling with a warmth that was unmistakably human. "We've learned so much," Roberts continued. "We've seen the birth and death of universes in that place. We've communicated with beings of pure energy. We've discovered that what we call reality is just one layer of something infinitely more complex." Captain James of the Titan materialized. Beside them, not walked in, but simply appeared. "The ships can now travel between dimensions. We don't need wormholes or faster-than-light drives anymore. We step outside normal space and reappear wherever we want. Distance has become meaningless." Johnson's science officer, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "This technology, it could revolutionize everything. Energy, medicine, space travel, defense. That's why we came back," Roberts said. "Not to conquer or to rule, but to share. Humanity is ready for this gift, but it must be given carefully. The power we now possess could destroy as easily as create." "What about the other species?" Johnson asked. "The Galactic Council is terrified. They think you're a threat." Roberts nodded gravely. "We know. That's why we need Earth to mediate. We're still human, still part of this galaxy. But we're also bridges to something greater. The ancient civilization that created the anomaly left us a message. Unite the galaxy, prepare them for what's coming." "What's coming?" Johnson asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "Something that makes our transformation look like a candle next to a star. The universe is about to change, Admiral. And humanity needs to be ready to guide that change." Asterisk the Galactic. Council's emergency session had been called within hours of the Lost Fleet's return. Representatives from every major civilization gathered in the massive spherical chamber that floated in neutral space, their forms projected as holograms from their respective homeworlds. The tension was palpable. Speaker Talon of the Vian stood at the central podium, his 4 arms gesturing emphatically. "The humans have returned with power beyond measure. Their ships dwarf our greatest stations. This is no longer the species we welcomed into our alliance 30 years ago." "The question," interrupted Elder Koss, one of the few elders who participated in galactic politics, "is whether they remain peaceful. Power corrupts, and absolute power... ... corrupts absolutely," finished Commander Rex of the Krex Empire. "My military advisors are unanimous. If humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy, we couldn't stop them. Their smallest transformed ship could destroy our entire fleet." Ambassador Ray, Earth's representative, stood to address the assembly. She had been chosen specifically for this moment, trusted by both humans and aliens alike. "Distinguished members, I understand your fears, but I ask you to remember humanity's history in this council. Have we ever betrayed your trust? Have we ever sought conquest? You've never had the power to conquer before," Talon shot back. "Now you return with ships the size of planets, claiming transformation beyond our understanding. How can we trust what we cannot comprehend?" Before Ray could respond, space in the center of the chamber shimmered. Admiral Roberts materialized, not as a hologram, but physically present despite being light years away on the Colossus. The security system screamed warnings, but he raised a peaceful hand. "I apologize for the intrusion," Roberts said, his voice reaching every corner of the chamber without amplification. "But I felt this discussion required direct participation." Panic rippled through the assembly. If he could appear here, in one of the most secure locations in the galaxy, what else could these transformed humans do? "Please do not fear us," Roberts continued. "Yes, we have changed. Yes, we have power. But we are still the same species that joined this council seeking friendship and knowledge. Let me show you why we returned." The chamber transformed. Suddenly, every representative could see beyond their dimension, glimpsing the same realm the Lost Fleet had experienced. They saw beauty beyond description, but also something else, a darkness creeping at the edges of existence, something vast and hungry. This is what the ancients warned us about, Roberts explained. A force from outside our reality, slowly consuming universes. The civilization that created the anomaly faced it once and barely survived. They left the test defined. Species capable of fighting it. Elder Koss leaned forward, his ancient eyes wide. The Devourers. We thought they were myth. They're real, Roberts confirmed. And they're coming. Not today, not tomorrow, but within our lifetimes. The Lost Fleet didn't just gain power for humanity's sake. We gained it for all life in this galaxy. Commander Rex stood, his warrior's instincts overcoming his fear. If this threat is real, what do you propose? Unity, Roberts said simply. We want to share our transformation with any species willing. Not to make you human, but to elevate you while maintaining your unique identities. The Vians with their collective consciousness, the Kreks with their warrior spirit, the Elders with their wisdom, all enhanced, all connected, all ready. And if we refuse? Talon asked. Then we protect you anyway, Roberts replied. But you'll be fighting with swords while we use starships. The choice is yours, but know this humanity will stand between this galaxy and any threat, transformed or not. Ray stepped forward. Earth's government has authorized me to share all our pre-transformation technology freely. Medical advances, energy systems, agricultural improvements, everything we developed before the anomaly. No conditions, no requirements. Consider it a gesture of good faith, the council murmured. Such technology would advance some civilizations by centuries. Dr. Smith appeared beside Roberts. We've also established a training station near the dead zone. Any species that wishes to begin the transformation process can send volunteers. It's not instant like our experience. We can control it, make it gradual, safe. Elder Koss stood slowly. I have lived for 3 million years. I have seen empires rise and fall, species evolve and extinct. Never have I witnessed anything like this. He paused, looking at the transformed humans. The Elders will send volunteers. If this threat is real, we cannot afford to remain stagnant. One by one, other species began to agree. Not all, some remained skeptical, fearful, but enough to begin something unprecedented. The willing evolution of multiple species, guided by humanity's impossible return. Asterisk. 6 months had passed since the Lost Fleet's return, and the galaxy had changed more in that time than in the previous 1,000 years. The transformation station near the dead zone had become the busiest location in known space, with ships from dozens of species arriving daily. Captain James stood on the observation deck of the new Titan, watching as a Vion vessel underwent its first transformation. The process was beautiful. The ship seemed to unfold like a flower, its metal hull becoming something between organic and mechanical, growing and reshaping according to its crew's collective consciousness. It never gets old, does it? Lisa said, joining him. She had been promoted to fleet coordinator, managing the integration of transformed and traditional vessels. Every species transforms differently, James replied. The Vians become these crystalline networks, all connected yet individual. The Krek ships turn into living fortresses. And the Elders ... their ships become libraries of reality itself. Earth had changed too. The technologies shared by the Lost Fleet had eliminated hunger, disease, and energy scarcity. Cities floated in the clouds, powered by dimensional energy. Deserts bloomed into gardens. Humanity was entering a golden age, but it was a golden age with purpose. Admiral Roberts wants to see you, Lisa said. He's in the war room. The war room was a new addition to the Titan, a space where strategists from all species gathered to prepare for the coming threat. James found Roberts there with representatives from 15 different civilizations, all studying a massive holographic display. "James, good timing," Roberts said. "Our deep scouts have detected something." The display showed the edge of the galaxy, where space itself seemed to fray. Dark tendrils, barely visible even to their enhanced sensors, were probing inward-like, fingers feeling for prey. "The Devourers?" James asked. "A scout force," Elder Koss confirmed. His transformation had been remarkable. He now existed partially in multiple dimensions simultaneously, able to see possibilities and probabilities. Like others saw colors. "The main force is still distant, but they know we're here." Commander Rex, whose warrior species had embraced transformation enthusiastically, pointed to several positions on the map. "We've established defense platforms here, and here, each one powered by a transformed ship core, capable of channeling dimensional energy into weapons." "It won't be enough," Roberts said quietly. "Not for what's coming. We need more." "More ships?" Ray asked. She had chosen to undergo partial transformation, enough to interface with the new technology while remaining Earth's diplomatic anchor. "More than ships," Roberts replied. "We need to transform space itself, create barriers between dimensions, fortify reality at its fundamental level." Dr. Smith materialized in the room. He rarely used doors anymore. "I've been working on something with the elder scientists. A way to strengthen the fabric of spacetime, make it harder for the Devourers to break through." "How long would we need?" Roberts asked. 2 years, minimum. "Maybe 3. Then we'd better start now," Rex said. "My people are ready. We've transformed 60% of our fleet. The rest are scheduled within the month." James looked around the room, marveling at the unity. Species that had been enemies just years ago now worked together, sharing technology and knowledge freely. The transformation had done more than give them power. It had shown them how small their differences were compared to what threatened them all. "There's something else," Roberts said. "The ancients left more than just the anomaly. We found references to other tests, other locations where species can evolve. We need to find them, activate them if possible." "A galactic transformation," Koss mused. "Ambitious." "Necessary," Roberts corrected. "The Devourers aren't just coming for us. They consume entire realities. Every universe they devour makes them stronger. We're not just fighting for our galaxy, we're fighting for existence itself." Over the following weeks, the galaxy mobilized like never before. The transformation stations multiplied. Species that had remained neutral for millennia joined the alliance. Even the mysterious void dwellers, beings of pure energy that lived in black holes, emerged to offer their assistance. Humanity, once the newest and smallest voice in the Galactic Council, had become the catalyst for the greatest unity the galaxy had ever seen. The Lost Fleet's return hadn't just brought power. It had brought purpose. As James stood on the bridge of the Titan, now a ship that could reshape stars and step between realities, he thought about how far they'd come. 30 years lost had led to a transformation that might save everything. "Captain," Ton reported from his station. His consciousness now merged with the ship's sensors. "We're receiving a message from the Outer Scouts. The Devourer's main force has been detected. Estimated arrival 18 months. James nodded. "Send word to all fleets. The real work begins now." The Lost Fleet had returned, bigger than planets, and powerful beyond measure. But their greatest strength wasn't their size or their technology. It was the unity they had inspired, the transformation they had shared, and the hope they had given to a galaxy preparing for its greatest challenge. Age of transformation had begun, and humanity would lead the way. Asterisk.